Hello, my name is Jessica Giselson, and this is going to be the oral presentation on the philosophy of Socrates for Humanities 1301. Socrates of Athens, Greek, known famously for the Socratic method of learning and moral philosophy, lived from 469 to 399 BCE before his execution by Paulus of Athens. He is part of a triad of famous philosophers, including Plato and Aristotle. The most notable trait of Socrates is that he is historically known to have left no written works, and was recorded primarily through posthumous accounts by his students, Plato and Xenophon. Socrates was an ambiguous figure who supported and believed learning is an unceasing search for knowledge without any regard to finding the right action or reaching an end. His belief and values in the lack of human perfection and pursuit of knowledge and understanding, to question in order to learn, and to support the process of thought and introspection, is one of the most influential and developments of Western education and learning theory today. Argumentatively, Socrates has made his position on government clear in the wake of an tentative attempt at democracy, noting, unless either philosophers become kings, or those we now call kings and rulers take to pursue a philosophy. While he supported the concept of government, he realized human avarice and ignorance made achieving true perfection in a governing body of any form a pipe dream. Additionally, pre-Socratics commonly practiced monism and studied the natures of things, such as Pythagoras, who created the harmony of the spheres through his study of musical intervals and mathematics, or the creation of the atomic theory by Leucippus. Socrates most closely practiced what is known as sophist philosophy, focusing on how do we know what we think we know, and how can we trust what we think we know. The focus is not on the natural world, but on the human mind and humanism, the actions of human beings with a focus on political action. Socrates, in fact, much disliked most of sophist values as well, with an exception for debate, which he made his chief occupation. The concept of humanism, along with his rejection of typical Greek knowledge like mythology, were points of note. Socrates focused on human essence and thought process, which would become one of the biggest changes in the worlds of education and learning processes, changing the focus of study and the consideration not only in scientific education, but in ethical and political. Socrates' development of question-and-answer dialogue or dialectical method and other general teachings was given freely and without payment, promoting fair treatment and good ethics. This was in contrast to sophist practice of demanded payment and questionably virtuous behavior. Socrates recognized that beliefs tend to be built on a mix of prejudice, history, and education, and urged others not to mistake one's own opinion for fact, but to question and reason as to how and why things are, and how they came about, and in turn if they are infallible or otherwise. It was this practice that inevitably doomed him to execution along with other sophists for the crime of impiety. The Paulus, in an attempt to mockery, subjected him to a trial of which he was convicted 280 jurors to 221 and sentenced to poison. It was at this trial, at 70 years of age, in which Socrates was sentenced to death and refused to flee or request alternative punishment. One of his other core beliefs, which came to represent common justice, goodness, and consideration of individuality and humanity. According to Socrates, virtue is knowledge. That is to say, if we know what is right, we shall perform right actions, and no one does wrong voluntarily or on purpose. Socrates held little faith in the government, but supported the idea of democracy, and therefore let himself be tried and sentenced by Paulus. At the end, he said he still felt he should be rewarded for promoting thought and education, but would not amend his ways as the court had requested. I would reply, men of Athens, I honor and love you, but I shall obey the god rather than you. As long as I breathe and have the capacity, I shall never cease philosophizing. Socrates' speech on consideration, morality, and what exactly his impiety charge was incurred for brought many to see him as a hero and a figure of understanding and forgiveness, as the same institution and people who were condemning him were noted not as evil, but ignorant and forgivable for their lack of knowledge. As a moral philosopher, Socrates defended the soul is more precious than the body, and learning is a cultivation of the soul. When he told Athenians that the only thing worth studying in life is the soul, he meant the essence of man was not the body, but the soul. His thought process and practices of rhetoric and philosophical debate on humanism, goodness, and what leads us to our beliefs, and education for the sake of education and understanding has echoed throughout millennia into the practices of today. Socrates' effect on today's society has had huge impacts on Western culture and life. The Socratic method is used widely and liberally in education, scientific fields, general ethics, law, and other fields to promote critical thinking and deeper thought processes. His challenging of social norms by way of Sophist and Polus back in his time has promoted the questioning and revolutionizing of social and political climate change. Self-knowledge and virtue, as Socrates promoted, has inspired moral and ethical consideration and led others to change their ways or use critical thinking in times of strife. Philosophical ethics, as we know, began with Socrates himself and the argument of good and evil, which affects legal and moral code of modern day. I hope you enjoyed this oral essay, and thank you for watching.